Hello. Now that we have had a very quick overview of how we draw 2D shapes, we're going to learn a bit about extruding and lofting surfaces. Now, extruding is the process of transforming a 2D plane into a 3D element, and that command is called extrude. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to assume I have a circle right here and of a certain diameter that I want. And I want to extrude that surface or to extrude that shape into um, into a 3D space. So the first thing I need to note is that this is a line. It's just a set of lines and there's no area inside it. So I will have to fill the area inside the line and transform it into a surface. So to do that, I'm going to go to the surface menu, and then I'm going to go to planar curves. So I'm going to choose planar curves right here. And it says select the planar curves to build the surface. So I'm going to select that curve and right click once I'm done. And you can see that now there is this plus sign inside, and this has shown that this is a surface. Now to change the view, and we've come across that before, to change the view from wireframe to rendered or to shaded will show me that this has become a surface. So let's go ahead now and delete that surface one more time and see the difference in the shaded or the rendered view. This will make it a bit easier. So now I don't have a surface, I have just a line or a circular line or a curve. And then I'm going to go to surface and I'm going to click on planar curves. And then I'm going to choose the circle. Once I'm done, I'll right click and you will notice how that surface was created. Now, the next step is to transform this from a 2D surface to a 3D surface by, if I want to extrude it, so I can go to solid. There is extrude planar curve or extrude surface, and I can choose the straight surface and I can select the surface. Once I select it, I'll right click and then I can define how high my surface is right now. So you can see it says the extrusion surface. It's waiting for me to enter the extrusion surface and make it say 500 units. Now here, this is a solid, so it was filled. If I didn't have a curve, if I didn't have a space or a surface created, I can always extrude only this surface. And in that case, it will be a very thin surface. So once again, I'll go to solid and I'll go to extrude planar curve and I'll go to straight. And then I will select the curve that I want to extrude. And then I'll right click. And now I can define the height. Now notice how, because this is capped, it did not make big of a difference. However, it's just the structure of the shape that makes difference. Now I'm gonna go ahead and draw a set of curves that are freeform curves. And I can say, I'm gonna go to the right view and I'll say that I'm gonna turn my ortho mode off and I'll start drawing my curves and say I want this curve to look like this. I don't know what that object can be, but regardless. And I can again select it, go to solid, extrude planar curve, and then extrude it straight. And notice how in the 3D element, now it's becoming more of a shape inside. Now, the beautiful part about Rhino, in my opinion, is that it shows me the solid, but the outline or the curve itself is still there. So I have the extrusion as a separate object than the curve. So I can always select the curve and move it in any other direction that I want. Or I can also delete it so I don't have that outline in there. This is pretty much extrusion using Rhino. There is another thing that might get us a bit more confused. So what if that shape was not straight? What if it was a curve? And I'll show you what that means in a minute. So I'm just going to delete that extrusion. I'm going to go back to my original curve and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to click on Control-C, Control-V 2 times. So now I have 3 copies on top of each other. So once I click here, you can see the list shows 3 curves. All I'm going to do is I'm going to select one of these curves and move it at a certain, I'm going to select one of these curves and move it at a certain distance. So now I have that curve twice. You can see it right here. I'm going to go back to the origin and I'm going to move that curve again to the other side. So I have the curve added or copied 3 times. I can select this curve. I'm going to show the control points of the curve right here. I'm going to start editing it. So say I want this curve to be moved, or this point to be moved, and let's take it from the side view. I'm going to move it in this direction, and notice how the shape has now slightly changed. I'm going to change this, move it in, just so we can have a bigger difference in the shape. And I can move this there. I can start playing around with my curve. So this is how I want. I'm going to double and click on escape twice. Remember, this command is one of the commands that I need to click twice on escape to disappear, for the control points to disappear. So right now, this is how my object looks like. And now I can extrude it or loft it so that I have a solid that matches this and goes along this curve. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the loft command. I can either type in loft, or I'm going to select my curves, and then I'm going to go to the surface menu, and then I'm going to choose loft. And notice how it's asking me to drag the seam. So in which direction do you want that loft to be? And it's important that all 3 points are identical. So they're along the same line or pretty much in the same location, and that they are pointing in the same direction. If not, then I'm going to have to click on flip and then choose. So if this is if the arrows are in opposite directions, like what we see right here, I have 2 of them going up and the third one going down. That will not give me the result I'm looking for. So I'm going to press to fix that. I'm going to click on flip, and I'm going to click on that arrow again so that it flips up. And I'll show you. I'll show you just an example of what I want it to look like, and then we'll go ahead and show you what we don't want it to look at. So right now, all the arrows are in the direction that I want. Once I'm done, I'm going to right click. And I'm going to accept the defaults. I can make it a closed loft if I want, or an open loft, and notice how this makes a difference in the way it looks. I can split the tangents. I can do whatever I want here. I'm going to keep the split tangents unticked, and I'm going to accept all other defaults, and I'm going to click on OK. And notice how now I have my object that is following the curves that I have chosen. Now I can always go back and loft again. So I'm going to right click. So that I have the left command, or the last command activated, which is loft, and I'm going to choose these curves. I'm going to right click and notice the arrows, and I'm going to flip one of these arrows just so you see how that result is different. Once I right click, notice how the loft is not what I wanted it to be, simply because the arrow was in the opposite direction. So let's avoid that and go back again to loft, select my curves, make sure they're all in the same direction. And I'm not going to choose close loft again, so that you see how I want the curve to look like. And I'm going to click on OK to accept all the default settings. Notice how this loft is not closed at the top, but rather it follows the curve or the points that I wanted as per the curves that I have first chosen. Now, this helps a lot in editing and in producing organic shapes a little bit more easily. All I have left is to close this side. So to close it, I'm just going to click on the curve and not the surface. Remember, the curves were not deleted. And I'm going to go to surface, to surface, yes. And then I'm going to click on the planar curves. And I'm going to locate my planar curves right here. And you can see that this is now a closed surface. And if this is what I want, then I will be happy with the results. Again, the other side, I'm going to click on planar curves. And there is my object that I have produced out of these 3 shapes. Of course, I can always loft them so that I have a smoother surface right here. So I can click on the 3D, fillet, not loft, sorry. So I can click on the surface loft, and it says select the first surface and then select the second surface to loft, and you can click on OK. And you can see that because I did not specify the surface, let me just undo this, and I will fillet these 2 surfaces. Oh, sorry, made the same mistake again. Now I'm going to choose the radius. I need to make it as small as possible. Let's say 0.01. And I'm going to select the surfaces, and I can always fillet them so that it becomes a bit smoother. And as you can see here, it became smoother. Now the radius was a bit too small. I can always go back and edit that as I want and as I find appropriate. Now, this gives us a lot of options and a lot of things that we can edit and play around with Rhino in a very simple and straightforward way. Of course, if you have any questions, please let me know. And I wish you the best of luck in modeling your project. It's a pretty straightforward process. Now, the next step is we're going to learn how to dissect this into sheets or into sections so that we can build them using a 3D printer or, a laser cutter into a physical model.